because I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated.
Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. I am joined by my good friend, Amy McGrath. She was the first woman to fly a combat mission for the Marine Corps, as well as the first to pilot the F-18 on a combat mission. During her 20 years of service in the Marines, she flew 89 combat missions against al-Qaeda and the Taliban. Amy, the SecDef nominee says that women shouldn't be in combat, that, I don't know, they disrupt unit morale. We actually have two things to talk about: that outrage and the fact that he is now being prepped with lists of disloyal generals to fire on day one. Thoughts?
Well, which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with how unfit you are to serve in the military.
Yeah.
As a woman.
It's so frustrating for me. I'll just say that word as opposed to another word. To hear people, and it's usually men, right? Sometimes it's young men, which is even more frustrating, say that you should not and cannot do the things that you have already done.
Already done.
Okay. And so, it's just extremely frustrating. The arguments are bogus. I wrote an article over 10 years ago now when I was a mid-grade officer in the United States Marine Corps, that these arguments about women in combat are bogus. None of them have proven true. The argument of unit cohesion, for example, is just not true. The bombs still hit the target on time. If you're a qualified Marine Corps naval aviator, guess what? You can still land the jet on the back of an aircraft carrier at night in bad weather. You're in. The jets don't turn pink, okay? And you can get the job done. And I'd laugh at this, but this is the reality that unfortunately that we live in today. And one of the things about that I think a lot of people don't know about the Marine Corps is that when you look at the ground, the ground MOSs, the ground jobs, the ground combat jobs that were not open to women, that only opened during the Obama administration, Marine Corps didn't have set standards for those jobs, and the integration of women made them have standards, which is a good thing, right? You need to be able to do a certain amount of physical training. You need to be able to carry a certain load. You need to be able to hike a certain distance. In flying, you need to be able to swim a certain distance in flight gear. And all of those standards, we finally got them to the point where, okay, this is what you need to do this job. And if you're a man or a woman and you meet those standards, you should be able to be in that cockpit or in that inside that tank, or as an infantryman or woman, whatever. If you meet the standards, you're good to go. That's what this has shown us. So that's the way I feel about it.
I want to go back to the unit cohesion argument, because it was the same argument. It's the same argument that's been trotted out anytime that there's an argument to open the services to groups that have been shut out. It was the argument used during integration. It was used during don't ask, don't tell. And to me, it is itself a tell. The people who trot it out are telling on themselves. Because I think it's probably fair to say that there are some people who wouldn't be okay with a black person or a gay person or a woman in their unit. And it's those people who shouldn't serve in the military. It's actually Pete Hegseth who is unfit because for whatever reason, he can't accommodate a woman in his unit.
Well, he's unfit for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
That's just one of them. But yeah, look, the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I remember being, I was in Afghanistan during the build up to that. And then I went to Capitol Hill during right after the repeal, and everybody was worried about, oh my God, what's going to happen? You know what, Ken? It was big fat nothing burger.
Right.
Nothing happened. People were able to be who they were, and nobody really cared. And what I always say to people is, what folks this is what I love about the military. You know what folks in the military really care about? More than, whether you're a lesbian or gay or who you marry. Can you shoot? Can you drive the tank? Can you fly the plane? Can you drop the bomb? Are you going to have my back when I'm getting shot at? Are you a person of character? That's what people care about. And so that's ultimately why I love the military. It was such a place where all that other stuff was kind of stripped away. With regards to diversity in general in the military, there's a fighting force that all looks the same. They're Russian.
Yeah.
And how well are they doing? Okay. Just because a fighting force all looks the same doesn't mean that they're super effective. All right.
It's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break here to let you know that we'd love to hear from you. Your comments, suggestions, thoughts about future topics and guests. Email us at info@thekenharbaughshow.com and make sure to rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, and back to the show. If Trump has his way, he's going to purge the Pentagon. He's going to gut the military of senior officers he deems disloyal. And that's already beginning with these lists that are being drawn up by, for example, the American Accountability Foundation, headquartered in Kentucky, your state. It's nothing to laugh about because they're deadly serious. This is how this begins. They are providing these target lists to make sure that Trump's military does what he wants them to, not what the Constitution obliges them to do.
Yeah, there's so many things there. First of all, these lists, of course, are disproportionately filled with women.
That's right.
Who are admirals and generals. And I think that, if they're all targeting leaders in our military who have cared about or publicly said something about the strength of diversity, which is a strength. Okay. And so that's why they're targeted. And it's all about leadership. These folks want to be leaders. They're leading a diverse force. They're trying to tell their people that this is a good thing, that we are all come from different backgrounds, different religions, different races, different genders, and that we all need to be respected as warriors. Well, why is that so controversial? And so, I mean, I think that what it will do, though, if you purge and don't promote or kick out these officers that have championed and said things about diversity in a positive way, that no one's going to want to say anything. Everybody's going to be worried about protecting their careers. They're not going to talk about basic leadership stuff. They're not going to meet the needs of the people under them because they can't talk about, diversity being something important. And oh, by the way, we're not generally distracted by this in the military. There's this notion on the right that the Pentagon is distracting our force from warfighting. Well, that's total BS. All this is leadership 101. And we've learned the hard way, right? And if you don't take it from Amy McGrath, take it from the United States Naval Academy just won a very important federal case in court, basically saying that they need to look at diversity when they look at trying to get candidates for the Naval Academy. Why? Not because it's a good thing to have, not because it's like the right thing to do or because they're woke, but because it's important for military effectiveness. It's important for readiness down the line. It's important to have leaders in our military that look like our military. It's common sense. And we've learned this the hard way. You can't have a bunch of officer corps that is all a bunch of white guys when the rest of the enlisted corps is 45% diverse. That doesn't make any sense. You can't have a bunch of officers and leaders that are all men when 30% of the military or the Navy are women or 20%. It's just, it makes sense. It's about unit cohesion. It is about leadership, and it is about military effectiveness. Number one.
Yeah, I would extend that. your observation that we need a leadership cadre that looks like the military. We also need a military that looks like the society it exists to defend. And it's amazing to me that supposed sophisticated thinkers like Pete Hegseth, he's a Harvard guy, right? If I'm not mistaken, they don't understand the long-term implications of having a military that is so insulated, so isolated, that looks nothing like the society that exists to defend. The implications for democracy, for civil military relations. My guess is they actually do know, they don't care, right? And they're speaking to an audience of one.
They are. The arguments on the right are twofold, really, that, hey, we're distracted by all this diversity stuff. No, we're not. We've been doing it for years. And we still are an effective fighting force, and we're trying to get even more effective. And the only reason that we're all distracted by it is because of them. Number two, the argument is, well, if you diversify the force, and particularly with women, the standards get lowered. No, they don't. Actually, what happens is we come up with standards that matter to the job, and anyone that meets those standards actually met them. Those of us that have been in the military know that, especially women who have succeeded in the military, we don't want somebody next to us that hasn't met the standard.
Yeah.
So, I just think that these arguments are just completely bogus. And it's sad to see them coming up again.
Agreed. Well, very well said, all of it, Amy. Thanks so much for joining us. For those who want to help, because I get this question a lot, there's all this hand-wringing and despair, but there is a resistance growing. We are better organized this time than we were in 2016. We have networks now like the Midas Touch Network that didn't even exist back then. How can people help?
I think, number one, staying engaged. Okay. Many of us, including myself, sort of want to disengage. And I think that's important. I think after the election, we kind of want to throw up our hands and say, I'm out. And I've talked to many people that are just, I'm going to do something else. They're not. But I think it's really important that we do stay engaged. And as time goes on, groups will form, ideas will come about in order to help push back on some of this craziness. And if you're not engaged, you're not going to know about them. So right now, stay engaged and be ready for when some of these things start to develop, and then be a part of them. That's what I would say.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. Mm-hmm. We'll have you back soon. Appreciate it.
All right.